Let's talk about Form 730. And when we talk about Form 730, we're speaking about the monthly tax return for wagers. So it's a very specific niche industry, if you will. Here's an overview I want you to pay attention to. So as you can see on the screen right now, this is Form 730, at least the top part of it. So this is actually a monthly tax return for wagers. So what you want to put it, you want to put the first name, last name. You want to put the month and the year. So everything is actually this is a monthly tax return. So you have to specify the year. And also the month that you are filing this form. You have to put the EIN. So basically you want to put the street address and zip code and everything, the state and the city. And so you have to check whether or not this is the final return or this is about an address change. In our case here, a hypothetical case, we have chosen to go with a final return. Again, this is a monthly tax return, so this is a final return. And so line 1, you have a gross amount of wagers accepted, so $100,000. The gross amount of laid off wagers accepted during the month, we have $50,000. And so when you add lines 1 and 2, you have $150,000. Okay. And so when you follow the instructions on line 4A, you have 100. So basically 40,000 times 0.0025. You have 100. If you apply the same calculus to 30,000 to 30,000 times 0.02, you have $600. So when you add those two amounts, you have $700. Okay, and so you actually report this on line 6. We have a line 6. The balance due is $700. So this is pretty straightforward in terms of how you actually calculate the amounts. And I want to show you the second screenshot here. At the bottom of this tax form 730, don't forget to actually sign and date the form. And so this is kind of cool. And then you have also the payment voucher 730V. That's the voucher that relates to this form. So you have a clear idea what you have to do here. So this is kind of straightforward here. By the way, boss, I want to quickly welcome you back to the show. It's really a pleasure to have you here. Make yourself comfortable. You are going to enjoy today's conversation. So when we talk about Form 730, we are actually talking about a form that is, I think I've said this before, it's all about monthly filing. Okay, so this is a federal excise tax that's really imposed on wagers, and this is actually imposed on some certain types of wagers, such as bets placed on horse racing, dog racing, GETTY, and lotteries. And it's important to know that not all types of gambling activities are subject to this tax, and it primarily applies to specific types of wagers and establishments involved in such activities. And so one thing I want to say is that Form 730 is typically filed by businesses that operate in the gambling industry. So we are speaking here about bookmakers, racetracks, off-track betting, parlors, and casinos. And so these businesses are responsible for collecting the tax from the individuals placing wagers and then reporting and remitting the tax to the IRS on a monthly basis using Form 730. So they don't have to do it on a quarterly basis. They have to do it on a monthly basis. The IRS just wants to make sure that everybody abides by their tax obligations on a consistent basis. So this form, actually, the way it stands right now, has several benefits. You have, by filing the Form 730, you are able to comply with tax regulations. In other words, you do not invite and you do not trigger any IRS audits. Okay, you are complying with tax regulations. You also have accuracy in tax reporting. So this is kind of cool in terms of showing you what you have to do in terms of not only the compliance at the federal level, but also at the state level, because there are some states that actually take your Form 730 federal form to actually see exactly what kind of operations you're having at the on a monthly basis. So you have accuracy in tax reporting. You also have transparency and accountability. That's what we love a lot in terms of the wagering activities. And so you also have deductible expenses. So while the federal excise tax on wagering is generally based on the gross amount of wagers, you may be eligible to deduct certain expenses related to your gambling activities. And so filing Form 730 allows you to report this deductible expenses accurately, potentially reducing your overall tax liability. And you also have a documentation for future references. So keeping a record of your wagering activities through a Form 730 actually gives you a documented history of your gambling transactions, so you are able to know exactly what kind of operations you have here. This is kind of cool. And this can be useful for future references, such as when applying for loans, demonstrating financial history, or addressing any discrepancies that may arise. And you also have a supporting documentation for losses. So if you have incurred gambling losses, filing Form 730 and maintaining accurate records can actually serve as a supporting documentation for potential deductions or offsetting winnings in future tax years. So this is kind of important. This can help actually mitigate the tax impact of losses over time when you think about it. Boss, I want to quickly remind you of today's topic. We are having a conversation about Form 730, and I'm actually walking you through this form. So let's talk about eligibility here. So when we talk about Form 730, we have to look at the eligibility. So individuals or businesses engaged in certain types of gambling or wagering activities are typically required to file Form 730. So I want to insist on that. We're not just speaking about businesses here, we're speaking about businesses and individuals, okay? So even if you're a sole proprietorship, you can still fall under the purview of this Form 730. So there are five categories of, five broad categories. There could be more, but there are five major categories. Let me just put it that way. Major categories of establishments that actually fall under the purview of a Form 730. So you have a licensed wagering establishments. You have a pari mutuel wagering. You have bookmakers. You have a lottery sellers. And you have sweepstakes and wagering pools. So when we talk about licensing wagering establishments, this category includes businesses such as casinos, racetracks, off-track betting parlors, and similar establishments that are legally authorized to offer gambling or wagering services. And for the pari mutuel wagering, so individuals or businesses involved in pari mutuel wagering, which refers to betting systems where all bets are pulled together and the winner's share is determined by the total amount wagered. Okay, this is actually French pari mutuel, so mutual bet, if you will. And bookmakers, so people or businesses accepting and paying off bets, usually on horse races or other sporting events, are generally required to file Form 730. So this is a kind of important to really think about. And you also have to think about lottery sellers. So individuals or businesses authorized to sell lottery tickets or participates in lottery activities may need to file this form to report and pay the applicable excise taxes. And you also have to think about sweepstakes and wagering pools. So let's say if you operate a sweepstakes, betting pool, or a similar activity where, let's say, wagers are made and the winners are determined based on chance, you may be required to file Form 730. So it's one of those things where if you want more information, let us know in the comment section, and one of our team members will look at your situation and let you know whether or not your betting operation qualifies for filing Form 730 or not. I want to talk to you about the steps that really you have to follow when it comes to Form 730. First of all, you want to gather the information. We're speaking about gathering any documents that relate to your wagers, to your betting operation. So we're speaking about records of wagers received, winnings paid, and any adjustments or credits that apply to your business. It's all about looking at, like, putting yourself in the shoes of an IRS auditor and see what kind of information they will want to see. You want to fill out the business information. So here we are speaking about the business's name, address, EIN, and the month and year for which you are filing the return. And also you want to complete Part 1 task computation. So we are seeing the appropriate amounts here that matters when it comes to looking at what really matters to your specific case. So Part 1 the task computation, really it's pretty straightforward. And the Part 2 actually relates to credits and payments. So if you have any credits or payments that apply to the tax liability, you want to fill out Part 2. And so this could include any overpayments from previous periods. Remember, The period here is the monthly. So we previous months, if you will, or previous quarters, if you will, or any other applicable credits. So you want to subtract the total credits and payments from the tax due to determine the net amount owed. And so you also want to complete Part 3 monthly summary. So here you want to summarize the total wages received, adjustments, credits, and payments made during the month. And so this section provides an overview of your business's activities for the period. And so this is pretty straightforward. So at the end, you just want to sign and date the form. And the thing is that you need to actually sign and date the form because you are the responsible party actually filing this form. Remember, 730, you have to do this on a monthly basis. So you have to actually certify the accuracy of the form on a monthly basis. Otherwise, the IRS will reject your form, and you do not want to have that. So long story short, make sure that you submit the form on time, but please retain a copy for your records. You never know, something were to happen. You want to be able to go back to the form real fast and get the data that the IRS might be asking for, or for your own goods. If you want to confirm certain things, you never know. So this is pretty important. By the way, boss, I want to quickly remind you of today's topic. We are having a conversation about the Form 730. Let's talk about some special considerations here when it comes to Form 730. What I want to say here is that, first of all, the correct filing period, this is a monthly return. So every single month you have to file the form. And so the due date for each month's return is the last day of the following month. So basically, if you are doing the January, if you have to file the January return, the due date is February 28th or 29th for that matter. And if you are doing if you are doing February, the due date for the February return is March 31st. Okay. And make sure that you have accurate reporting. In other words, you want to accurately report all the required information on this form. This includes what? The total amount of wages received during the month, the taxable amount subject to the federal excise tax, and the tax liability. And you want to calculate all along the tax liability. So the federal excise tax rates for wagers may actually vary depending on the type of wagering activity. So make sure to calculate the tax liability correctly based on the applicable tax rate. And so this is kind of cool. And you want to make the payments on a timely basis. So the tax liability reported on Form 730 should actually be paid in full by the due date. So you have to include, I showed you a little earlier, the voucher, right? We all saw 730V, V standing for voucher. So you want to include the payment along with the form when submitting it with to the IRS. You also have to think about the fact that you are able to file things electronically. So generally, Form 730 must be filed electronically using the EFTPS. So this is the IRS's electronic federal tax payment system. So ensure that you are registered with the EFTPS and having the necessary credentials to submit actually the form electronically. And also, when we talk about record keeping, this is another element the IRS pays a lot of attention to. You want to maintain accurate records of all wagering activities, including the total wagers received, payouts, and any other relevant documentation. And because these records should be retained for at least 4 years from the due date of Form 730. 4 years, remember that, 4 years. And if you have any questions, you can always consult a tax professional to sort of deepen, you can clarify certain aspects of the law, and that this will help you actually in terms of compliance over the long run. But everything I want to say is that it's always better to consult with the tax professional because you also want to look at the state aspect of things, the state tax compliance of things as well. So let's talk about Form 104. When we talk about this form here, 730, you have to understand that everything is totally possible. You can actually, even though I just told you that our preferred method of filing this form is electronic filing, you always have the option to actually file the form offline, not a problem. So you have the manual option is totally possible. So you can obtain a physical copy of the form from the IRS. You can actually order the form by calling the IRS at 1-800-TAX form, 1-800-829-3676, or by visiting the IRS websites. And so once you have the form, you can complete it manually, following the instructions provided, and then mailing it to the appropriate address as indicated in the instructions. You also have the option to do online filing. So the IRS offers an online filing option for certain excise tax forms, and so this is kind of cool. And so you have to really you could actually file this form electronically, and you can also use the EFTPS, as I said a little earlier, for the payments. Okay. And you also have an e-filing, so you can actually use a third-party software such as Tax Act, Tax Slayer, H&R Block. You can have a Jackson Hewitt. You can also have efile.com and others to file these taxes also electronically through software. That way you have a clear idea of what's really happening. One thing I want to say here is that when we talk about Form 730, you have to understand this is basically a conduit for the IRS to actually get paid every single month, to make sure that you are paying your fair share of taxes every single month. And there are other industries where the IRS is comfortable receiving those taxes on a quarterly basis. But when it comes to the betting and the wagering industry, the IRS just wants to get the data get the data and the payments for that matter every single month. So it's one of those things where it is your responsibility to actually make sure that you file the appropriate tax forms and also make the payments every single month. Otherwise, you could be actually be the subject of an inquiry or an audit. This is not a space where you want to be, and it's one of those things where it's a part of, if you are a wagering parlor, you want to really make sure that you comply with the tax laws, not only at the federal level but also at the state level. Let me close to this conversation by saying that when we talk about Form 730, you have to understand this is actually an excise tax, which means what? It means that you are able to basically you can really replicate the tax you pay to the IRS. You can actually add that on your betting operations. In other words, this could be actually be passed on to the bettor, so to the wager. So you're to the individuals and the companies and the organizations that are wagering through your organization, through your conduit. And it's one of those things where you have to be in a specific niche. And it's one of those things, don't think that you have to be in a company. You can be an individual. If you sort of fit certain criteria, then you have to pay this tax, okay? So we are speaking about businesses and individuals engaged in certain wagering activities, such as bookmakers, lottery ticket sales agents, and operators of casinos, racetracks, or off-track betting facilities. So if your business or your operations for that matter falls under one of those categories and meets the requirements for excise tax on wagers, you will likely need to file Form 730. And it's one of those things where you want to sign up, you want to register with the EFTPS right now. Even if you do not think you might be eligible for filing Form 730, it's always better to have the registration ready, so that if you were able to be eligible for this filing, then now you can do things seamlessly. One thing I want to say also is that while you are complying with the federal tax laws, you have also to think about the state aspect of things, because some states regulate wagering. Some states actually also impose an excise tax on wagering activities. So if your state is in this category, you want to make sure that you actually have taken care of compliance measures also on that front, and making sure that you are not only complying with tax laws federally, but also state-wise. Much for your attention. I really appreciate it. Let's do a quick recap here. So in today's conversation, I was just talking to you about Form 730. So I gave you the overview, the steps, and now I'm doing the recap. Thank you so much. God bless you. I'll see you next time. Until then, remember, stay marvelous.